What up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I've been having a lot of fun recording these episodes for you guys. So I hope you guys are getting a lot out of them. Trying to get some awesome guests that I'm interested in talking to, but that I know will also be interesting for all of you guys to listen to. My guest today is somebody you all probably know very well. His name is Bret Contreras, and you may know him as the Glute Guy. On Instagram, in general, his profession focuses on the glutes, training the glutes, how to get bigger glutes, how to improve your strength through improving glute strength and glute recruitment, all that kind of stuff. And so he has a gym in San Diego called the Glute Lab. He basically has made a career out of helping people, and probably mostly women, but just people in general, to get bigger, better glutes. In this episode, we cover not just glute training. I really was interested in talking to him as a practitioner, as a strength and conditioning coach. And so we talk a lot about, just strength training in general, the online world and how all of that works with being a coach and how he runs his practice. And he gave me a lot of good information, a lot of good tips on, running my business, running a business in general, and just being a fitness entrepreneur these days. I'll be honest with you guys, I actually recorded this episode a while back. This was actually the first episode I ever recorded for this podcast, and I waited this long to put it out just because I wanted to make sure that I had a flow with how I was recording or putting these episodes out before I put out this episode with Bret. Hope you guys get a lot out of this episode. It was really eye-opening for me and informative for me. So welcome my guest, Bret Contreras. All right. Hey, Bret, how's it going?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. So, a few years back, I was in undergrad. I was doing helping some people out with some research at the time, and I was doing some classes with a teacher of mine, and your name started coming up with the whole biomechanics thing. I was taking biomechanics at the time, so your name started coming up, and that was kind of like the first time I'd heard about you. And then I went to grad school, and I worked with Dr. Campbell in the Performance and Physique Enhancement Laboratory. He had a hip thruster that he had just bought, and we talked about you. And so, like, more and more, I started hearing the name Bret Contreras, and then, at the time, obviously, I knew you were from Phoenix, Arizona at the time, which is where I came from, doing my undergrad at Arizona State. And but then all of a sudden, it's like glutes became so popular, and like the glute guy, everybody knows who the glute guy is. How does it feel to be like this guy who brought glutes to be sort of in the forefront almost? Like, they're so popular these days, and I feel like you're a big reason for that.
How does it feel? It's a little bit bittersweet, and let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
I miss the days before they changed the Facebook algorithms. So Facebook was awesome. We had this great community. All of us were like, the whole fitness community was like this, and it was just different. And then once the algorithms changed, I think I was one of the first ones. I don't even post on Facebook anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I quit Facebook. I quit Twitter. I just do Instagram. I did a YouTube stint for a while, but then I don't like the comments on YouTube. I don't like,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, there's very hateful people. I could just disable comments, but anyway, it's interesting because you watch like the movie Social Network or whatever, the Facebook movie, and it was about this thing that's bigger and larger than life, and it's not just about money. And then they, in typical like fashion, they made it all about money and changed their algorithms, and it was just sponsored ads. I went from, and what I loved back then, I had power because of all the shares. It's like I could write, I could see something going on and that I didn't like, that I thought was pseudoscience or, hype, and I could make a post about it and it would get shared like crazy,
Right.
And the scientists had power back then. We could stand toe to toe with the marketers and the charlatans and we were making a difference. And then that's what I wish Facebook, it's just a company. You could argue that they owe it to their shareholders to try to make as much money as possible, but whatever they did, it ruined everything. It ruined it. You chopped off the legs of every scientist, because then it became, you make a scientific post and it would go, I went from getting like, say 3,000 likes and 500 shares. That was like the norm, to like 400 likes and 50 shares. It just wasn't very fun anymore. So that's where I switched to Instagram. But I realize I haven't answered your question.
That's okay.
Back in the Facebook era, it's like we all knew, and the way it used to be, we would blog. You'd film a YouTube video, okay? We didn't have editing. You'd like ask your girlfriend or your family member or your lifting partner, you'd be like, hey dude, can you hit record real quick? And you'd do the whole video in one shot. You'd be like, hey guys, I'm going to show you this exercise. Here's how I do it. And you'd be fumbling over things. And here's another variation. You wouldn't edit, you chop it up and blend it together.
That sounds a lot like the way I'm currently doing things. I need to step things up, is what you're saying.
You just do everything in one shot, upload it to YouTube. And then you'd write a blog post, embed that YouTube video into the blog post, and then you would publish the blog post, pick the thumbnail, and then post that to Facebook and Twitter, and then you'd send it out to your newsletter. That's the way we did things for a long time, and it worked great. And I miss those days. I miss blogging.
Yeah.
You could really delve into a topic. You could do it justice, and then the world went and changed on us, and people decided, we realized people have the attention spans of fetal pigs, and they need just like an infographic, or not even now. Infographics are too complicated. You just put a quote on Twitter, post it. It just gets worse. Like pretty soon, it's just going to be like 10 letters or just one picture, because people can't pay attention to anything. So I miss those days, because back then we had, like, I'm a historian of strength and conditioning. I love the history of it. I love studying what the old time strongman men did. I like studying the history of, exercises and methods and periodization methods and things like that. And, the Russian texts. And then with even with blogging, in the last 15 years, it was cool. It was like, Paul Chek made stability balls popular. JC Santana, made these exercises popular. Then Mike Boyle came and basically made Bulgarian split squats a lot more popular. Ben Bruno then made doing single leg stuff with like weighted vests and dumbbells and tons of weight a thing. I made hip thrusts and glute training more popular, but you always knew, we all followed each other, and we always knew who came up with what. And it was like a way of, crediting people and monitoring progress. But anytime there was someone who would plagiarize or steal, like, people would call that person out. And then it would be everywhere. It would go, there was a policing system. So that would go all over Facebook, Twitter. People made a YouTube video about this person's a fraud. It'd be on Reddit, and so it kept everyone in check. You didn't see so much stealing from other people. And I miss those days. There's just way too much. Now with Instagram, it's like, someone comes on and says, you stole this from me, and they just hit block, delete. They block you, delete your comment. And there's all my colleagues that these people out there, they'll just take an infographic and then take your exact infographic and erase your name off it and put their name on it. Mm-hmm. And there's people who have just copied my entire system, and they don't even mention me or tag me. I remember one time I mentioned that I invented the hip thrust, and all these people came on. LOL, did you invent squats and running too? LOL, I was doing that in the 90s. And I'm like, no, you weren't. Yeah. You weren't doing it in the 90s. These young up and comers don't even know the history of our industry, and they don't even know who came up with what. And now there's not really okay, there was also the website T Nation. It used to, I was a big writer for T Nation, and
Yeah.
that was the hub. That's what everyone, all of the strength coaches, all the serious lifters went there to learn, because you had the best of the best. In the beginning, it was, Ian King and Charles Poliquin and, Christian Thibodeau and Chad Waterbury, uh, John Davies, who else? All these guys. And then there'd be interviews with like Charlie Francis and Pavel and Louis Simmons and and then guys like Eric Cressy and Joe DeFranco and Mike Robertson and Mike Boyle, Dan John. I know I'm going to leave a bunch of people out, but Martin Rooney, myself. There would just be articles from us in there. Ben Bruno. I know I'm leaving a ton of people out, but you had these were the top strength, and these were people who were working with people, strength coaches. You followed their stuff, and now T Nation became watered down. Like, I don't even read it anymore. And I read it, and that was a huge part of my education, but that was kind of like a central hub where you knew this is, you kept track. This is who came up with this. This was the evolution. You had this is the way we train, and then you'll see these little spikes where this person made this popular and we went off in this direction a little bit, and this person made this popular and we went off in this direction, this person came up with this idea. Now and before the internet, it was like, I sometimes think how easy it would have been, well, how easy or how difficult it would have been. Say I came up with hip thrusts in the 80s or before the internet, I wouldn't have had a voice, really. I don't know how I would have made them popular, because there wasn't blogs, there wasn't social media. Most people learned from the magazines, the muscle mag.
Right.
I would have had to get in the muscle mag somehow. But on the flip side, if I would have just, like, say I went to like Venice or something and met Arnold, or somehow like trained with Arnold, or like showed him these hip thrusts and he took a liking to him, and he, if he was like, this works the glutes, and he told people about him, the whole world would have been doing them. It would have been overnight. Like the whole world would have been doing them for glutes. Now, glute training wasn't real popular back then. I don't know if he would even like them, but it's just very different. Things always change, and what I don't like seeing is it's not more like, it's like I always, it's funny, I used to be interviewed in podcasts and people would go, doesn't it bother you that all these people come out with these glute books and they come out with these things and they're just copying you? And I'm like, I could care less. Yeah. Everyone knows who the father is, who the originator is. Everyone knows that I came up with a lot of this stuff. So to me, they're just spreading my methods, and it makes me more legitimate. Yeah. And now it's a few years later, and I kind of feel opposite in the sense that I see all these people, and it just bugs me that there are bad people out there, just horrible individuals who just, like, I mean, think about it. Like, let's say you were like, I'm going to start doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and you were learning from some guy, and say you did it for like a year and got really into it. And then you just, enough to like show moves and do the basics. And then you just like decide, I'm going to make my own jiu-jitsu Instagram channel. And you go on you find the top 5 most popular jiu-jitsu guys, and you copy, and you just go from the beginning, and you copy every video they've ever done. And you just do it in your own words. Hey guys, today I'm going to teach you the whatever, I'm going to teach you how to escape this mount, or I'm going to teach you this submission, or how to defend this submission. And you just copy everything they've done to a T. And you never credit them. And you pretend that you could even say you have a black belt. And if someone comes on and be like, where'd you get your black belt from? Just delete them. And never credit anyone. And you can rise up, and you've never even, like, and you're not even, and you could just be complete
Yeah,
phony.
you should be
And
a
there'd be
blue belt. You could be a blue belt, for instance, and say you're a black belt, and you seem legit because you kind of look like you know what you're talking about because you're copying all these people who do have their black belt. Just
and then the people in the know might be like, he doesn't look real crisp on that. That's not
right,
really how you do it. But the general public, if you just do that and then you're a marketer, try my new system and say you I don't know, say you just, I don't know, have this amazing physique and you're jacked up on roids. And I mean, I know some of these fighters are on a ton of stuff, and then they release these strength and conditioning programs, and that's not, and they're silly for jujitsu. It's like
yeah,
they're not good programs for jujitsu. But I don't know why I got off on the topic of jujitsu. My point is, imagine being that bad of a person, but that,
right,
you know, it's actually good. Like that's a what a there's no consequences anymore. Like back in the day, that person would have been laughed off this. You know, you'd type in their name, and their first 10 things that came up would be, this person's a fraud. Now there's zero consequences. So if someone takes us, like steals a sentence from you, one sentence, that's plagiarism. You know, like someone steals your quote, that's plagiarism, and you're now a plagiarist.
mm-hmm,
There's a word for it.
mm-hmm.
Or especially if they steal a whole paragraph or an article from you, you are now a plagiarist. I could care less if someone steals a sentence from me. People have stolen my whole identity and my whole methods, and then they don't credit me, and they pretend, you know, there are guys that are like out there saying I'm the number one glute expert in the world, and I'm like, because I got my PhD, I've published 50 studies, but I own a gym, I work with hundreds of people, and I've been doing this since I was, you know, I've been a trainer for 22 years now, and it's these young people, and anyway, there's no consequences. They will keep doing it, and it'll just get worse because you steal a sentence, you're a plagiarist. You steal someone's whole identity and copy everything they've ever done. You're not you're There's no label for it.
Yeah, I
There's
think you make a good point because you know these days, especially like there's no with social media, with the way people have access to information, it's great, but it's like a double-edged sword because there's no system for checking whether people are really legit. Like you're saying, back in the '80s, maybe like you had to maybe publish a book or get into a magazine. People fact checked you. People like looked into your background. Is this guy legit? Does he really have the credentials that he's talking about? And these days, you know, as long as you look pretty good, as long as you, there's a quote, I don't remember who said it, but it's kind of like to an average person, when they look at two people who know more than them, they can only tell that those people know more than them, but they can't decipher between two people who know more than them, who knows more between the two of them. Does that make sense? So like you know more than me about glute training. If I were to start putting out some guidebooks on glute training, to a beginner, I look legit and you look legit, but they can't decipher which one of us is more legit. And people actually may not even pay attention to like, oh, he's got a PhD and his dissertation was in glute training, but they don't even look at that anymore. It's just about what you look like on Instagram, maybe.
It's funny you say that because I get I get these DMs, you know, and these DMs on my Instagram. People be like, they send me some. There's one guy who is a very obviously very jealous of me because he always makes posts about me and how stupid my exercises are.
Mhm.
Um, and I can't go see his stuff because he preemptively blocked me as if I'd ever gone to your stupid page, you know. So he blocked me from both pages. So people send me these things, and I'm like, I can't see it. I don't know what you're sending me. It's set to private, or it's or what. I can't go to it, and so they'll screenshot it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, this is this guy, and like I kind of want to offer to debate him, but um, no one in only one person has ever accepted a debate challenge in this industry. That's another thing. Like people want to have honor. I would never back down from a debate if I was running my mouth. But um, anyway, but I'm kind of bored. I think it would be fun to try to debate him. But it's yeah, you're right. People will be like, well, he says this, and I'm like, ugh, like I have a PhD. This guy doesn't. But that
Yeah.
doesn't automatically make you me right. But it's like look at my before and afters. But also just do it for yourself. It's funny. Some guy I remember I presented at a conference about a year and a half ago, and this guy comes up and he's like, he was trying to say something nice to me, but he was a guy putting on this conference, okay? And he meant this to be nice. He was like, Brett, I don't know, I don't know if hip thrusts actually build hypertrophy or not in the glutes, but I do know they help with like teaching good like deadlift lockout mechanics, for example, to help you prevent anterior pelvic tilt. But he was trying to say something nice, and instantly I'm like, you position yourself as an expert. You don't know if they build muscle. Like someone who just starts lifting knows that. Like we've gotten to a point where the experts, you don't have. That's what I mean. I have a lifting background since I was 15 years old. Whether something builds muscle, if you feel it working, if you do an exercise and you feel it working, then it builds muscle. The end of story. It's not like this exercise. Like how could the fact that this person could say this, I can't take him seriously anymore. It's funny, and I didn't do the conference again this year because I can't take that person seriously. They're some people just rely on what they hear from other people. Like, could you ever imagine doing a curl and being like, I don't know if this builds biceps muscle or not. If it puts tension on the muscle, it builds the muscle. Now we can argue about which exercise is more effective than others,
right?
Based on like the biomechanics of it. But whether it builds muscle or not, of course it does. If an exercise works that region primarily, then it builds muscle. But anyway, back to your original question, how does it feel being the glute guy? I love it. I feel like I did play a part. It was like I think it was like the Kim Kardashian type thing, and Jen Selter and all these, obsession with glutes combined with the glute, these me pushing these new methods, not just hip thrusts, but all the different bridging and thrust patterns, and also the lateral and rotary movements. Like back in the day, it was all men the only experts in strength and conditioning were men, and men made the rules. And that's kind of the older era. Before Instagram, it was like, you wanted to know if something's legit, you listen to the men. Well, men, when I came out with hip thrusts, in fact, most of the names I mentioned from the teenaging era, it's so funny. They'd write articles or blog posts or videos saying like the hip thrust is stupid. And I went from idolizing all these guys to realizing, oh my God, they actually don't care about their clients' results. They're just jealous.
Right.
And I went from like, what? Like do 3 sets of hip thrusts the way I teach them, and your glutes will be burning like crazy. How the hell do you think they got so popular around the world? It's not easy. Like name one other exercise that's become popular around the world in the last 20 years. There's none.
Yeah.
In order for the hip thrust to gain such popularity, it has to work well. And these guys are saying it's not safe, and I'm going, I've never had a single injury. And I realize the only reason they're saying this is jealousy, which I don't have that character flaw.
Yeah.
I'm not jealous. Everyone has some jealousy, but like when someone invents something in this industry, I'm like, cool. Like, I never hated on Greg Glassman for CrossFit. If someone comes up with an exercise or a method, and it's funny, I never liked Charles Poliquin, but I remember being interviewed in a previous podcast about German volume training. The person brought up this study, but Charles and I butted heads, but I'm a scientist. So this person said GVT is not effective in reference this paper. And I said, hold on. That's not the same system that Poliquin espoused. He said use 60% of 1 rep max, only do 1 exercise per day. This study didn't do that. So although it's an interesting study, it can't be used to denounce GVT as Poliquin proposed. And, I'll defend whatever is scientific. But basically, and then so it was the Kardashians and like even Jen Selter on Instagram posting belfies, butt selfies.
Yeah.
And then the education, like here's these new methods, like use bands, do abduction work, do higher reps, do hip thrusts, do glute bridges. Also do your squats and lunges and deadlifts and things like that, but also, and train glutes harder. Don't do 1 leg day a week. Train glutes 3 times a week. And then also Instagram. So Instagram comes along, and now the guys are at a major disadvantage. It's like we we
Ugh,
could we could
tell me
post
about it.
yeah, we could post ourselves doing 10 chin-ups, and no one cares.
No one
A
cares.
woman does that and they're like, oh my god, you're amazing. And we post a shirtless selfie and no one cares. A woman
Yeah.
posts one, and it's when I got on Instagram, I was so intimidated. I was like, wow, here are these women with 1 million followers. I don't even know who they are, and they have 1 million followers, and they have powerful voices. They have all these followers. So you get these strength coaches that would come on, and they'd be doing hip thrusts, because I'd be tagged in all these posts. People would tag me, and I'd see the woman would be going, I love this hip thrust exercise. I feel my glutes so much. Here's my favorite method or something. And then some some male powerlifter or strength coach would come on and go, that exercise is very unsafe.
Mm.
It doesn't work. And then the girl would reply and go, well, that's funny, because I've hurt myself with squats and deadlifts before, and I've never hurt myself with hip thrusts. And as to whether it works or not, I've never felt anything work my glutes more than this. So you're wrong. And their comment would get like, 500 likes, and it would shut that guy up. And the guys realize, we don't have the men don't have the power they used to.
Yeah.
Instagram kind of gave the women way more power, and the guys, and it was, the women wanted to know how the females wanted to know how their favorite women were training. They weren't flocking to the men asking us, like they were asking these women. So and they all loved hip thrusts, and that's what really made the hip thrust popularity and glute training popularity skyrocket. So I'm proud of that, because I think the glutes are important. I never wanted to take the way I'm the glute guy, but I'm much more than, like, I love all of strength and conditioning. I love every aspect of it, from
Yeah.
the physical therapy end of things, to personal training, to strength coaching, to training of athletes, to bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, strongman, training for sport. I love biomechanics. I love physiology. I love everything, every aspect of it. And I never wanted to put the focus on glutes and take emphasis away from other things. It was just the glutes deserve more recognition. But I do think the one bad thing I'm not proud of is it made some people insecure about their butt,
Mm.
who have lousy glute genetics. Since
Sure.
since the dawn of bodybuilding is typically calves, right? Like some
Yeah.
people have, like, I don't have to do calf raises and I have nice calves, thank God. Some people have these skinny little twig calves and they can't do anything about it. Well, everyone has strong parts and weak parts. For me, my pecs develop very quickly. I don't have to work hard at them, but other muscles not so much. And like my quads, I cannot get huge quads to save my life. I wish I could. I envy those who can get giant quads. But anyway, uh the women who struggle with their glutes, it's like I made them insecure about it. So that's why I like this tiny but mighty concept. It's like if for even for me, my glutes aren't the biggest in the world, but you should have seen where I came from. I had nothing. They're
Mm.
way bigger than when I started, but they're also strong. I've hip thrusted 800 pounds. I've
Yeah.
deadlifted 620. My glutes are strong, and I'm proud of them for my performance, and everyone can get strong. So that I never wanted to make people feel insecure or less worthy because they don't have good glute development. That's the one thing I don't like about it.
Do you feel like, so I know, kind of on the same line, like if somebody were to deadlift or squat 800 pounds, it'd be a really big deal. People that would get a lot of likes on Instagram. That would get a lot of praise from people because they know how much work it takes to be able to do that. And the kind of, to put 800 pounds on your back is no small feat. Do you think that, well, first question, why do you think people don't care as much about you putting 800 pounds on a barbell and hip thrusting it? And question number two, do you think it's easier, harder, or just as hard to get to that 800-pound thrust as it would be to get to, say, an 800-pound deadlift or an 800-pound squat?
Great questions. Okay, so my thoughts on this. The reason why squats and deads, it's this double-edged sword, because they're the two lifts that give you the most street cred. They're the hardest lifts there are, you know. You're using the most weight, but it's also it's when you squat a lot, you know, you have to have very strong quads. Okay, when you deadlift, you have to have strong legs, but you're also going to have huge spinal loading, and you have to stay arched. If you round, you increase
Yeah,
the
you're
likelihood of getting injured
right.
when with that much weight, you know. So it's kind of this testament to, like, it's very rare. Now, it is your strength in squats and deadlifts and stuff has a lot to do with your anthropometry too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's funny because I published a paper with Andrew Vygotsky and Brad Schoenfeld and Greg Knuckles and Meg Bryant and who else? Who else was on it? Chris Beardsley. A bunch of people were on it, and we found that, you know, squat strength isn't as related to these variables as we think. Like, but it's just obvious it is. You can find this like Polish dwarf who squats like 4 times body weight, and because the dwarfs aren't just shorter, they have smaller femurs, and he just barely goes down and comes up and racks it. But he can't deadlift that much because his hands are small and he can't grip the barbell. So it's like the same thing that makes him an amazing squatter limits his deadlift. Like he can
Mm-hmm.
squat like, I don't know, I can't remember what he weighs. Say he weighs like 120 and he squats like, say it's like 600 or something, but he can
Yeah.
only deadlift like in the 300s. Now, if you have very long arms, it's like you're doing a block pull or a
Mm-hmm.
rack pull, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a deadlift. If you have, and I think it's funny the people who act like, well, everyone should be upright in a squat, and it's like you've never trained these basketball NBA players
Mm-mm.
with these long legs that fold over like an accordion. You can have them do front squats. You can elevate their heels. They're still leaning forward. Like they can't.
Yeah.
Whenever you say so, whenever trainers make bold comments, I know they haven't worked with many people. It's like you're exposing yourself to those of us who really do have a lot of experience. But
Well,
anyway,
it's funny. Let me, if I could say something on that. Like, I'm sure you deal with this a lot. Is I'll get people who come to me who have been told that, like, oh, your squat is messed up because you're not squatting upright. They have all these preconceived notions about how much they suck at certain lifts, and I tell them, I don't see anything wrong. I think you move pretty well, and you're just moving around what your biomechanics will let you do. And it usually, like, first of all, makes them feel a lot better about themselves, and second of all of a sudden, they like doing that lift again because
yeah,
they don't feel like they're broken.
oh, exactly. They needed that validation from a strength coach who knows what they're doing, and they were
Yeah,
fine along. They just thought you're supposed to be doing this upright, like almost like a Smith machine
yeah,
squat. You
yeah.
don't mean it all. But anyway, okay. So squats and deads are harder than hip thrusts. Okay, they they take more concentration. They require more spinal stability. You know, you have to stabilize your spine. That's hard to do with that much weight. I mean,
Hmm.
you have to breathe in, brace, diaphragm needs to contract. You've got to come down and not move side to side. So, I mean, you got to walk it out properly. You have to be in the zone. Anything wrong. And, you know, when I go for a new squat one rep max, there's always this, even if I'm in a rack, I'm like, I might not survive this. You know, there's a chance I might die.
Yeah,
That's why I always like at the very bottom, you know, you shoot up out of the hole. You're just hoping you have enough momentum to get through your sticking region. And conversely, okay, so I call it your lightning bolt, right? Your torso, femur, tibia, and
yeah,
everyone has a unique lightning bolt. And some lightning bolts are much better suited for squatting than other lightning bolts. You know, well, in hip thrust, there's not much of a disadvantage. It's
mm,
like everyone can hip thrust well.
yeah,
It doesn't matter if you have, you know, okay, if you have long tibias, then you might have to use a taller bench or you'll be at like an upward angle. Um, if you have a really short torso, it can be hard. You might not want to come to the ground with them because you'll slide down. So there are some challenges, but still everyone can be good at the hip thrust. You're not as limited. It doesn't require much coordination. And so and also it, some people, like for example, your client, Lane Norton.
hmm
Okay, Lane, what is the most he's squatted in deadlift? He's squatted what, like
661. Was his
661
power. Yeah, that was his world record, and he deadlifted 716, I believe, in
716, yeah.
competition.
So 661 squat, 716-pound deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the weirdest thing because I've trained with him a couple of times with hip thrusts, and he's
Oh my
so
God.
weak. He's so weak
Bad.
at thrusts. He's like 315 pounds is really hard for him,
Yeah.
And I can take 315, and I think I could launch it like a foot off the air, like if I catapulted it. Like, it's so easy for me.
Nothing against you, Lane. Just you
No,
and
I
I
would
both know
trade.
that hip thrusts aren't your thing.
I'd gladly, and he has huge glutes.
Yeah.
Lane has huge glutes. I'd gladly trade Lane and be way better at squats and deadlifts than
Sure.
hip thrusts,
Yeah.
But what is it? Because Lane has bigger glutes than I do, I think. So
Yeah.
it's something about and I remember seeing this article a long time ago, many years ago, by Scott Delp, and they moved the hip joint center like 2 centimeters in each direction, like down, up, left, right, and then diagonally in each direction. And it's been a long time, but if you moved it like up and to the right, you were way stronger at hip extension. But if you moved down to the left, you were way stronger at hip flexion, but weaker at hip extension. So, and I think it's probably range specific. Clearly, I have very strong end range hip extension strength. Lane has more flexed range. Whatever his, and we're not very good at, even biomechanists, we don't have this down to a T. But I guarantee if you took these top engineers, took these people from NASA and tried to get to the bottom of this, and you studied my hips versus Lane's hips and my structure versus his, they'd be able to say, yeah. And especially if you use like dynamometers and stuff, you'd be like, yeah, Bret has way more end range hip extension strength, but Lane has more flex range, or Lane has this, or whatever the difference, both skeletal and muscular, with your muscle moment arms and things like that. And so squats and deads are harder. They garner more respect. If I do an 800-pound, and the other thing is, if you do a legit 800-pound hip thrust, but the thing is, you see these crummy, it's like ruined. It's like if every 800-pound deadlift you ever saw was like round backed and ugly and looked like a scared cat doing it. It would cast doubt and influence the credibility of the lift. And most of the time you see these 800-pound hip thrusts, it's some skinny person. Same with a lot of these women will be like, oh my God, Bret, I hip thrusted 500 pounds. And I'm like, oh, great. And I'll watch the video, and they crawl up it, and they're like, and their chest is up like this. They're hyperextending their spine. They get a short range of motion. They don't even come close to locking it out. And then they come crashing down to the ground. Like, you didn't even work your glutes during that set at all,
Yeah.
If every time you saw something, it was like really good, legit form, you'd be more impressed. But interestingly, for those same reasons, the hip thrust, in my opinion, is the better lift because it doesn't require so much stabilization of the spine. It's not as hard on the spine. You don't have now you can get hurt. You can get back pain from the hip thrust if you hyperextend. Some people need to really focus on staying in neutral. The way I teach it, you don't hyperextend though. But anyway, with squats and deads, you can get hyperextension related pain if you're hyperextending during squats and deads. But a lot of the serious injuries are from flexion, from rounding. And it's not that rounding is inherently dangerous. It's just rounding under heavy load. So hip thrusts aren't as dangerous, and they don't require much coordination, and any body style, any anthropometry is well suited for it. It's very stable. You got 3 points of contact. The bench is on your back, and you got both feet. It's very, it's just and that's why I think one of the reasons why it works the glutes better.
Sure.
But it doesn't take the place of squats. Squats are still the king of lower body exercises. They build the quads, the adductors, the glutes, and they're very functional. Hip thrusts are also very functional for other reasons. They build the glutes, and they build more end range hip extension strength. Deadlifts, the hip hinge pattern is huge. It's very functional. It builds the hamstrings, the glutes, the forearms, the erectors. Like, you need to do, if you're training for function, you need to do all of them. But that was a great question.
I think maybe it also has to do with, obviously there's a sport that's made to see who can deadlift and squat the most. And there's no sport for who can hip thrust the most, unless you count Instagram as a sport or a competition.
Yeah,
But
that's definitely a
um,
factor as well,
on
right?
that same thread, I think I see this. I tend to see two different extremes. You mentioned how people, when they go for like a 1 rep max hip thrust and their form is really terrible and they're hyperextending and they're doing everything basically wrong. On the other end of things, and maybe I see this more with females, as I just kind of watch at the gym sometimes. I see some girls who come in who you could tell they want to get into like training their glutes, but they're kind of new. Maybe they haven't had a trainer help them out or anything. And they're always using such low weights. And I always think to myself, like, is it just that they're afraid to use heavier weights? Maybe they think that they're not strong. Like, what have you noticed with people that you've worked with in person? Do you feel like people come in and underestimate themselves more often than not when it comes to their glutes or any exercise for that matter? Do you think it's a more of a case of them being scared because they don't want to get bulky? Is it still that kind of thing? What have you noticed?
Okay, so such good questions. So I remember seeing on Mike Boyle's, he's a strength coach in Boston, and I saw he was training a female hockey Olympian, and she did a weighted chin up with 45 pounds, and she busted out 5 reps. And up until that time, it never even dawned on me to have my female clients try weighted chin ups. I just never, I don't know why. I just, think the most I ever had was a girl get 12 chin ups. But I never thought, oh, let's add weight. It was like, that's what men do. Men add
Right.
weight. Women, I don't know why. It just, sometimes you have to see it. It's like that 4 minute mile effect or whatever. Roger Bannister broke it one year, and then the next year,
Everybody. Yeah.
50 more people broke it. It's just
Yeah.
causing that barrier. And so, um, a lot of times with hip thrusts, it's like if you just did them on your own, you would just stick to like 135. But if you see someone doing like a 400-pound hip thrust, you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize you could get that strong at them. But what you said is just right on the money, and it's these two extremes. So I would venture to guess, like everyone who comes and trains with me in person, they're like, oh my god, I got such a good glute workout, and I would say 20% of them hip thrust just right, okay, because they follow me and they watch my videos. They're just right. The remaining 80% are split down the middle. 40% of them go too heavy, and I have to take weight off, and I fix their form, or I optimize their form, and then they feel their glutes more, and they're like, oh man, I like this style way more. I'm going to go lighter and use this type of form, and I feel it more. Then the other 40%, and it might even be more than this, because I always do this with all these beginners who come, or like their first time at Glute Lab. I'll go, all right, let's try let's I'm like, I put on 135, and they're like, oh well, I'm not used to using this much, and I'm like, I can look at you and I know you can get 135. Just try it,
Yeah.
and they get it. They'll get it for like 12 reps. Okay. Then I go, I'm just doing this just to show you how strong you are. And I throw on another plate. I'm like, this is 225 pounds. This is, you can do this. I just want you to try it here. And they're like, no, there's no way I can do it. And I'm like, just try it. Remember the form I taught you. Look forward, and then they get it. They'll get it for like 3 reps, and they're like,
Right.
oh my God, I can't believe it. And then I'll back off and have them do a few more sets with lighter loads and really focusing on form. But then that's what they needed to get them over that mental hurdle. And I don't think it's fear of getting bulky. I think it's just hell, imagine never watching videos of strong people. Imagine you just like got thrown into a gym and you said, you here's a gym, use it. You never knew of like strength standards or anything. You just went and used the different weights. You'd get to a comfort zone with every machine and every exercise, and then all of a sudden, so that's why, because a lot of these people lift from their home or something, but that's what guys do. We go to the gym and we look, we pay attention. We're like, oh my God, look at that guy benching 3 plates per side, you know? Damn,
Right.
I'm only using 185. He's doing 315, and look, he's got a huge chest and arms, you know? I need to be doing that. I need to work harder.
Yeah.
We're competitive, and especially if you've trained with, you know, like on a team in a sports setting, like you know what everyone does. It's like, you know, this guy's good at squats, this guy's good, but you train for performance. You want to be your strongest at every lift. And a lot of these people have not been pushed, they haven't been coached, they haven't been in an environment where there's really strong people. Once they get I remember training this person, this woman came to Phoenix when I lived this before I moved to San Diego. She came for 2 weeks, and I trained her for 2 weeks. She came to me probably 6 times, and she was hip thrusting 135 for 3 sets of 10. Well, by the 6th session, she was doing, because I just immediately had her do 135 for 30 reps. I'm like, keep going, keep going. She's like, oh my God, the burn. And I'm like, why were you doing sets of 10? She's like, I don't know. I thought I was doing them hard. I had her do the next session 225. Then I had her do 275. But anyway, by the 6th session, she was doing 135 for 30, 225 for 20, 275 for 12. And then, yeah, that was like her sets in just 2 weeks. And she put 2 inches on her glutes in those 2 weeks.
Wow.
And yeah, this is where you get these husbands that visit me. I would have that happen back
Right.
in Phoenix days. These boyfriends and husbands would show up and they'd go, you don't know me, I'm so-and-so's husband. I just want to shake your hand and just tell you, you keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing great things. And I think it's so funny because they were so appreciative of their spouse's glute development. But yeah, 2 inches in 2 weeks. That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Muscle doesn't build that fast. It has to be some edema, some cell swelling, some pump, but then it never goes down. It never went back to, so I don't know what happened there. I remember talking to a sports scientist about that, but it's, you get that, you do that, and then you set them on track, and from there on they see great progress. That's a thing. That's why I always tell people, if you can come train with me one time, I can help your form, and I can help you figure out the weight you should be using, and I'll also give them goals.
That's a good point. I think like,
Double body.
oh, sorry, I cut you off there.
I'll say in 3 months, I want you doing double body weight for 3 sets of 10. So you weigh 130. I want you doing 260 pounds for 3 sets of 10 reps. And then I'll be like, DM me in 3 months. I want to hear that you hit your goal. And you know, that
Right.
huge help.
So for what I'm hearing basically is that partly a matter of people not really understanding what they're capable of, and maybe needing somebody to tell them, hey, you can do this, and kind of getting over that hump, because they had a mental block in their head as far as what they thought they could do. And then you came along, or maybe another trainer came along, or they saw somebody in the gym hitting a weight that they didn't think was possible, and they worked up the courage to do it because of you or whoever they're working with. And all of a sudden they're just like, they got past that first hurdle, and now they can continue climbing. That brings up a good question. So you obviously work with the Glute Lab. You have your gym down in San Diego. You work with a lot of people online. You know, you have your individual clients. I know you have your Booty by Bret, which is more of like kind of sending out to the same program to a lot of people that they follow, if I'm not wrong. Do you feel that the online coaching can be as effective as in-person coaching? Do you feel like in-person coaching is always going to be better if it's something you can do?
In person is so much better.
Yeah.
It always is. However, I would venture to guess, just from being at so many, I always train at commercial gyms. It's part of my job. When I travel, and even here, I have 2 memberships. I got a membership to The Gym and also Crunch, because I want to see what's going on. I mean, this is my industry. I can't hide in a cave in my Glute Lab all day long. I need to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, judging by the quality of personal trainers out there, it's just like every profession. You see this with doctors, lawyers, physical therapists, you name it, whatever profession. There's like this continuum of the lower level people who are piss poor at their job, and then the creme de la creme at the top. So if they're training with a not so good personal trainer, also judging by the programs I see that they're doing, that are given to me, or the things that are being told, like I could get better results training someone online than another personal trainer would training them in person. But I'll qualify that with my Booty by Bret. I have videos and I walk them through it. I think that's
Yeah.
crucial. If I
Yeah.
just had so many coaches, so many bodybuilding coaches, they give their clients a program, and there's no video tutorials, there's no form checking, there's no like, hey, like, and these are people paying like 500 a month for online coaching, and they don't even, and that's such a critical component. Like, I'm a strength and conditioning specialist. I want to see, because that's half of it is, are they using good form and are they progressing? You don't just give someone a program and expect them to do well with it.
Right.
They need guidance and feedback. But what's weird is with Booty by Bret, some people see amazing results, and it's like, for me, it's like, yes, I know I'd see way better results if I trained all these people in person. You'll never replace that, you know, and that's one thing I'm struggling to keep up on the Booty by Bret Facebook page. It's gotten out of control. But I spent a solid month answering, like, doing all the form check requests, and it's so hard because, like, I give these a generic program out. This month we're focusing on squats. This month we're specializing in hip thrusts,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh God, okay, this person, all they have to hip thrust off of is this 20-inch tall plyo box.
Mm.
It's terrible. That's too high. So I try to come up with ways to help them try to put a step under your feet, or but in some scenarios, don't even hip thrust because you don't have a good setup.
Right.
I'll have some people squat, and it's like, I might be able to get that person to squat in person to squat well, but online, sometimes it's like you give them something to work on. And I know some coaches will be like, oh, like, I've dealt with these powerlifting types that are like, oh, I can get everyone to squat perfectly. No, you
Mm.
can't. Like, no, you can't. You think so because you haven't worked with that many people from all
Yeah.
walks of life. And I do agree, you can always give someone a squat pattern, but sometimes they need to be slightly above parallel. Sometimes
Sure.
their squat is, their best squat is a goblet squat. Sometimes you need to elevate people's feet. Sometimes you need to do box squats where you keep vertical shins and sit way back. There's so many issues at play. But if I was working with these people, some people I would flat out tell, like my glute squad, my best squatter is Amanda, and I told her, you're not deadlifting. You can trap bar deadlift, but every time she deadlifts, she rounds.
Mm.
It's her hip flexion mobility, and she can do RDLs just below the kneecaps, and she can keep the arch. But if she goes from the ground, she hurts herself. So I give her trap bar deads or
Yeah.
heavy kettlebell deadlifts, and she's fine. But everyone needs it's ideal to work with an awesome coach who knows what they're doing. The problem is those people are few and far between. So
Mhm.
you'll never be able to do what you can do. And also, I can even watch them on like Skype or something working out, and you won't replace what you can see with your own two
Good
eyes
point.
in 3D when you move around them and check out different angles. So you'll never replace the in-person coach. But I would argue that, how many people can I work with in person?
That's true.
Couple hundred,
Yeah.
and instead I can work with 5,000 with my Booty by Bret.
Right.
It's unlimited. So
Yeah. I
I,
think.
I do see your point there. It's like I had to cross that bridge at one point and be like, well, and then I was like, okay, I know these people can see better results. And I just had a funny testimonial the other day that I posted on my Instagram, and it was like, I spent all this money and all this time with this previous trainer, and
Mhm.
I spent 9 months with Bret or whatever it was, and my butt and my physique looked way better than all, and it's only $30 a month, and I spent a fortune on this other person.
Yeah.
So online is, but here's the weird thing too, and you might agree with this. Sometimes you get, with the online, they can email you, especially if you're a coach. They can email you a lot. They can text you. They can So they actually would get better results with you than they would with their other trainer if they
Sure.
couldn't X that person, or if that trainer doesn't take, half the trainers you see go to any commercial gym, the trainer doesn't even write out a program. They wing it on the spot. They're too lazy to write a
Yeah.
workout. So
Yeah.
you show up, the client shows them, they're like, "What's up? Okay, let's try some. We're gonna start off with some walking lunges. Okay, just start walking. Just start lunging up and back." And then they're like texting and doing Instagram, and then, okay, that's good. We're gonna go to this. They don't take videos of their clients.
Mm-mm.
They don't utilize progressive overload. Like they don't even know what they're doing.
No.
It can get you some results, but not much. So then you come along and you say, "I want you to take videos of your lifts, and I'm going to have you, I want you telling me your RPE. I want you, communicating back and forth." And so you could actually see way better results than that other person. So
Yeah.
it's a great question, but it just depends. But then if that same person did work with you in person, you'd see even better results.
It'd be
But
better. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I used to work with people in person when I was in undergrad and grad school, and now I don't, because I don't have a gym to work out of that I feel comfortable working out of. And I don't really, right now, I'm not in a place where I want to spend all my day in my own gym, but I kind of have gotten used to the online coaching lifestyle on my end, at least. But it's something I would like to do eventually, anyways. But I think in both areas, you can see the same pitfalls. So if you go to a regular commercial gym, you might run into somebody who really knows what they're doing if you hire them to be your personal trainer. But I'd say, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, maybe you're going to get somebody who's doing what you were just talking about. Like they're not really planning out your workouts. They're not really putting much thought into what you're doing. And I think the same thing can be found online. Unfortunately, you might hire somebody who just sends you a templated workout that's on a Word, it's not even thought out. It's just a Word document that says, squat 3 by 10, deadlift 4 by 8, something like that, as opposed to somebody like yourself, or I'll throw my hat in the ring, I guess, that actually thinks out the program, has video links for you to look at, has notes on how to execute the program, asks you for feedback, asks you to give them videos of your workouts so you can tweak form and things like that. But I would agree that there's things that you can catch in person that you can't necessarily catch on a video.
not even just with exercise form, also just their overall energy levels
yeah,
and
yeah,
things like
exactly.
that. A lot of times when I train my clients, I have planned for them to do this, and they show up and they're fatigued and they're tired and their warm up sets look heavy, and I'm like, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, especially working with these 20-year-olds, it's like, yeah,
Partying.
did you party this weekend? Did you do ecstasy? Did you do did you take any pills? Did you sleep? Okay, all right. We're gonna
Yeah,
go heavy on Monday. Today we're gonna go lighter. I want you to, work on technique, work on the mind muscle connection. But Thursday we'll try to set a PR or something. But anyway, you,
yeah.
you would never know that online. They'd never
Sure,
see that.
sure. And you can do everything you can. I mean, you could set up a bunch of systems to try to capture that, but at the end of the day, they're, um, people can't lie to you in person, because like you said, you can tell what they're moving like. You can tell what their energy is like. If they're a talkative person and for some reason today they're kind of just
Yeah.
going through the motions, you can see that. Online, you can't see that. They can just lie to you and say they're feeling fine, or they just don't tell you that they went out and partied because they know maybe that you're going to give them a lighter workout or something like that, and they don't want that to happen. But I think it's tough. That brings up another question of mine, which is, when I first started doing online coaching and coming from sort of personal training, my main concern was like, how am I going to know what this person needs? Like, how am I going to assess the way they move? How am I going to assess what kind of squat I need to give them or deadlift? And I've come up with some ways to do that. But I'd like to know how you go about doing that. So if you get an individual client who wants programming from you, how do you go about figuring out what kind of program you're going to write for them, what kind of movements you might give them?
So okay. First of all, it's funny listening to you because how old are you?
Just turned 29.
29, and I'm 43, so I've got some years on you. And I remember
Yeah.
being around 30, and it's almost like we're afraid to make money. It's like you overthink things. It's like, look, this
Yeah.
person wants to hire you. They're
Yeah.
willing to pay you. Are you confident in your ability? Yes. Then take their money and do your best.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that too. Like, I'm always used to online, or like there was no online coaching when I started personal training. We didn't have the freaking internet. So it was like, I train people in person. So when it started online training, I'm like, how can I do this right? I don't want to just jump into this without doing it justice. And I had all these concerns. And um, now I don't do one-on-one coaching.
Oh, okay.
So I do personalized programming. I write their programs, which I'll get to in a second. But I think it's important in this industry it's like I wrote down all the ways to make money in fitness, and I have a list of it. And it's interesting because I have influencers, because San Diego's like, I mean, hell, you just visited me. Everyone, when they travel to San Diego, they're like, I want to stop by Glute Lab. So I meet a lot of people. And like, I'll ask them, they'll ask me, how do you make your money? And I'll go, how do you make your money? And a lot of people have one main revenue stream. Well, this person does 30-day challenges. This person has a pay website. This person has an app. This person writes ebooks. And it's funny, I don't do any of those. I don't have any four of those. And by the way, this is a side tangent. You can get carried away being like, oh, I need an app. I need this. I need to do this. And then you hate your life. And so you should just focus on the things you like doing. I don't like personal training as much anymore because it kills me. Hell, and even podcasting, I'm soaked in sweat right now. When I podcast, I'm like, I have all this energy, and when I train people now, I'm not the trainer that's like, okay, two more, good job, like low energy. I'm like trying to motivate people, and I'm really concentrating. So if I train people for 3 hours, I'm wiped out now. I used to train people 8 hours a day. Now 3 hours is like where my quality starts to drop off. But my days are fun for me because it's like I've got my things to do list, and it's like, all right, I have to make this list for my partners. I've got to call one of my business partners. I had NSCA called me at 10:30 because I did a talk for the virtual training conference, and I need to go through that, and they need to walk me through it. Then I have the podcast with you. I have another call at 2:00 with my manufacturers. Then I got to go drop by my mailbox and pick up some stuff. Then I want to lift. Then I got to handle emails. I got to make an Instagram post, and I have 2 clients that I have to train, and that's my day. It's jam packed. Then I'll get home exhausted, and I'll try to answer all my DMs, and my day is jam packed, but it doesn't feel too. It's kind of fun because of the differences in there. It's not one thing for 10 hours.
Right.
But
Right.
that's a tangent. Back to what you were saying. I realized I hate waking up to. I have this, I have this things to do list. Here it is. It's like I write things down of what I need to do. And I like to just wake up and get right to it. But a lot of times you wake up thinking, I'm going to make this list I need to make for them. No, you can't, because you woke up to, I mean, if I had 100 clients, online clients, you can do the math. I could put something out tomorrow and say, all right, guys, I'm taking 100 clients. I would have it by the next day. I know I would. With my sounds cocky, but with my level of popularity, I would have 100 clients, and I could say it's $500 a month, and so then I'd be making what, 500 times 100, I'd be making 50 grand a month. I'd be making 600 grand a year from that alone. And guess what? I would hate my life.
Sure.
The goal is happiness, not just money. Money can make you miserable if that's all you focus on. So you need to do what makes you happy. And when I wake up to like 14 emails and 10 text messages, it stresses me out. And then you want to have good vibes. Like you want to be like, I'm going to set aside these 2 hours for replying to these people.
Yeah.
You get an email and you should be smiling. That's great, Susie. That's a great question. I'm going to link you to, but I just am annoyed because I'm trying to get these things done. And I have in my mind, the things I want to get done. You don't want to be annoyed that your paying client is asking you a good question. sometimes I'd be like, oh my, and you try and make an FAQ to cover these things and they don't read it. And they'll ask you these
And then
questions.
it annoys you more because you're like, oh, you clearly didn't read that.
I know.
Yeah.
So I just said, I'm not doing the online. And
Yeah.
some of my friends love it. But some people love in-person training. Some people love the online. So I love writing programs. I've always been obsessed with writing programs. I have like programs that I wrote when I was 18,
Wow.
and like, and all along the way, I have just this evolution of, and I love looking back at how I used to design programs, and I went through these different phases, and
Yeah.
so I have a questionnaire for them. Now,
Okay.
I don't like, I always say this, when you start working with someone, if they really love this way and you make them do this way, they don't have buy-in sometimes. Like, for
Mm.
example, two of the most common types of training are body part split and then full body. If you only do full body training and then you try a body part split, you kind of feel like you're like, okay, that was cool, like hitting all the angles, but I feel like I didn't even do anything. Because you're used to a workout being 3 sets of squats, 3 sets of bench press, 3 sets of deadlifts, 3 sets of chin ups, 3 sets of hip thrusts, and then whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's brutal. Like, to do squats, bench, deadlifts,
That's
chin
a
ups,
lot.
in one workout is brutal.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and it wipes you out. Then you go do a delt day, and it's like 3 sets
Yeah.
of lateral raises, front raises, rear delt raises, maybe some like dumbbell shoulder press or cable upright row or something. Then that's it. You're like, you're used to working your whole body, and now you're just working this,
Right.
and it feels like you don't do anything. Now, on the flip side, if you're used to doing a body part split and you move to a full body, then you're like, oh, okay, I liked this, but I miss feeling the burn. I
Mm.
feel like I didn't fatigue the fibers. I didn't hit all the angles. Cool, I did
Good
military,
point.
but what about rear delt raises? What about my lateral raise? I didn't do any lateral raises. How are my delts gonna grow if I was doing 16 sets for delts and now I'm just doing 3? So they have this bias, and if you move them too far away from that, they don't have the buy-in. They're skeptical. So I try to start them off where they're at, because if they like
Mm.
body part splits, I can create a body part split for them and you can trick them too, like into doing full body. It's like, you'll do, okay, I'm giving you a body part split. Monday, I'm giving you delts and quads. Tuesday, I'm giving you uh, chest and hams.
Yeah.
Wednesday, I'm giving you back and glutes or whatever. And then it's like they're actually doing full body every day, or
Yeah.
whatever. Or you can just move them a little bit. But once you get them to what I call the complement phase, they're your soldiers. Like, when you get them, you work with them for 2 to 3 months, and all of a sudden they're getting compliments. Especially if you work with their diet too. You
Mm.
don't just want to. So you work with their diet, you work with their resistance training, you get them gaining strength, and then all of a sudden they have friends from their colleagues at work and their friends and family, and they're like, "What are you doing? I want to do what you're doing because you look great." Then
Right.
all of a sudden you can give them whatever, and they'll follow it to a T. But if you start that off too fast, then it can backfire on you, and you don't want them being skeptical at all. You want
Yeah.
them to buy in. So I don't move the needle too much from the beginning.
I
I
got
start
you.
them off saying, how do you like to train? How many days a week do you want to train? What's your equipment availability? What are your favorite exercises? Do you have any exercise you hate? Have you had any reoccurring injuries? Are there any exercise that you hurt yourself on a lot? You know, I want to know what they like and what they don't like. Because if
Yeah.
someone loves training arms and then you don't give them any curls or tricep extensions, they won't like the training program as much as they could. And the one thing I can't stand is when trainers and coaches are like, you won't see me programming isolation movements.
Hmm.
I'm a functional trainer. It's like, how how is it a big deal if you threw in, you know, 2 sets of curls at the end of their workout or 2 sets of tricep extensions? It's not that big of a deal. Meet them halfway. And it's not, and also curls are functional. Like, carry heavy stuff around. You're like this
Right. Right.
isometric curl position. They are functional. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, like so you mentioned like your chest being something that grows, and then you have a hard time with your quads. Like for me, I've always felt like my arms need, more size. So like if I hired a coach and they just were like, yeah, I'm not giving you any arm workouts because, it's not functional. I fire them because I need arm workout.
Exactly.
You know.
And picture that everyone has that. I mean, even pro athletes. I've worked with some pro athletes and they love training arms. Like
Mhm.
everyone's human and
Well, sometimes training can just be fun for fun's sake. Like,
right.
why does everything have to be like, oh, I'm doing this because it's going to elicit this, and they're just fun. I like to do curls. I get a pump. I look good in the mirror.
Yeah. And to me, that's like most of your clients come to you for physique purposes, but I think we're bored. Trainers and coaches are bored. We want to make everything about function, and
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
not always have to be about function, but also you'll get also it's just like why I like flexible dieting. You'll see the best results with your diet. You'll see the best results with your training if you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
If you stick with it for if 5 years from now you're still eating nutritiously and still hitting the gym, you'll be in a much better place than if you killed it yourself for a year and then quit. So we
Right.
need to do more things. Everyone buys a gym membership, they just don't go. Everyone
Right.
starts a diet and loses some weight, they just don't stick with it.
Right.
And so we need to be as an industry, we need to be thinking of more strategies to keep them enjoying it. So your program that has 25 sets of brutal, that's not easy to stick to. So I'm known for my lower volume, but if you're really working hard, a lot of my bikini competitors that will train with me, they do 30 sets in their workouts, but I'll give them 12, but they're wiped out.
Hmm.
I had 12 really hard sets during that hour. So
It's a good point. I think a lot of people get into this trap of like doing like useless volume where they're not really like pushing themselves harder. Like their first 10 sets of the day, they pushed hard kind of. And then like sets 10 through 20 and beyond, they're just kind of like going through the motions and not really doing much to elicit hypertrophy at that point. But
yeah,
they are stuck thinking that they need that many sets or else they're not going to grow.
yeah, I agree. It's like junk volume, and
Yeah.
it's like it's almost like they're doing cardio. It's like it's not hard.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's like you're just
They're just burning calories at that point.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think so. One thing that is interesting and is kind of, well, you've touched on it a couple of times, I guess, is sort of this going back to the beginning, like this disconnect sort of between what happens in social media or like in practice or like with the bros and things like that and what happens maybe with the science. And sometimes they don't agree. Like sometimes the science maybe hasn't investigated some of those things, or it's just, like you mentioned with the German volume training, like they just didn't study it the right way. They didn't have the right protocol, but they're making claims that it doesn't work.
And that's what I get annoyed at any coach that doesn't also embrace science, but also any scientist that doesn't understand the limitations,
Right.
which it's funny because I, I think there's a lot of jealousy in this industry. And so I've noticed I've gotten more flack from scientists as I've gained more
Now
popularity.
you're getting hate from both sides. The scientists don't like you and the bros don't like you.
Yeah. The coaches were always like, "Oh, he doesn't train anyone." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "What? I've always trained people." But now you can't deny it because I have a gym. And then the
Yeah.
scientists are like, "Well, he's not publishing as much," or some of the theories don't have, if you make a claim, like I could pick apart I just wrote the book Glute Lab, okay? Spent two
Yeah.
years of my life, and it's 606 pages. And if you said, Brett, put on your science, like your like science hat, like, and scrutinize this, I could go through it and just give me a red pen and I could pick it apart. There's
Hmm.
no evidence of this. This is conjecture. Here's a study showing that this wasn't true. Here, what about this paper? But it's like those researchers and the scientists, they don't spend their days educating people like we do.
Hmm.
They write papers and they scrutinize things, and they don't work with a lot of people and try to make broad, like sometimes models are fun, like models like the force vector theory. You know, there is support in the research for it, but it's a nice, useful model to make for training for athletics for coaches to say, okay, I'm doing vertical hip extension exercise, I'm doing vertical lower body movements, I'm doing vertical plyos, but I need to also be doing horizontal hip extension exercise and horizontal plyos and lateral and rotary. I need to throw those in. The emphasis can still be on vertical, but then add these things in.
Right.
But once someone in the research really tore that hypothesis apart. And I think they're spending too much time in the lab. You're getting too serious, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Not to say we should be lackadaisical with the claims we make, but it's like, they start drifting too far and they don't have their practical roots. And it can happen both sides too. You can get so entrenched in your theories, and then, I mean, there's a lot of examples even going on right now where we're really hell bent on this is the model, it fits in this nice piece, but then the evidence doesn't support it.
Right.
We're all guilty of it in this industry. And that's why you have to be open-minded of being wrong. Like, I know in my book, in like 3 years, in a couple of years, I'll update it, and I'll have to do some serious changes in that book because I'm wrong about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid of that. I like that. How would it be fun if you figured it all out? That's what makes us fun.
Mm-hmm. What have you found, maybe a few different things that you found, I mean, because you've worked with thousands of people at this point, what have you found maybe in practice that either hasn't been corroborated by the evidence in scientific research, or on the flip side, what is maybe something you found that research says to be true that more often than not can't really be applied practically in the gym with the clients that you work with?
Wow, that's a good question. So one thing, and it's funny because I'm published on some of these papers with Brad Schoenfeld and James Krieger, where, these high volume routines saw better results than the lower volume groups.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, I you know I'm very weary of the long term. I know I could take anyone, and that's what I see some coaches do, is they'll take some of my clients will start working with a new coach, and and they're like, God, I remember one of my, I've worked on and off with her for 10 years. She gets this powerlifting coach, and she's just setting PRs every day
Mm.
for like 3 straight months of crushing PRs. And I'm like, and he tells her what load to use and what to get. And that's hard to do, like, as a coach,
Takes a
do
lot of
three,
work.
do 315 for 3 or whatever. Like, how do you know? Anyway, she was killing it, but I was like, Lizzie, like, you gotta, and I knew what was gonna happen. I knew if you keep trying to go up, something
Crash.
stops. You
Yeah.
always hurt yourself. You
Yeah.
always hurt yourself. You have to deload. You have to periodize. You have to switch up strategies. You can't. No one just keeps going up and up. That's not how progressive overload works. But during those 3 months, she thought she stumbled upon the Holy Grail, and she thought she had the greatest coach in the history of mankind. And his major limitation was he doesn't understand. He pushes you until you break, and then she's never been the same again.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't want to hurt people. I don't
Right.
know. They're powerlifters. They're willing to take that risk. But if I train my bikini competitors and stuff, I don't want them to ever get hurt.
Yeah.
And
I
in my
think that
gym,
as trainers, like our first thing, just like doctors, like should do no harm. That should be the first thing we think about.
yep, exactly. So, but the really high, super high volume programs, I it's like I can get, like, take glutes for example. I can get them doing super high volume if I do mostly exercise that work you in shortened muscle length positions, because they don't, and they're more concentric in nature. Like hip thrusts, barbell glute bridges, cable pull throughs, back extensions, um, body weight, reverse hyper variations, and all lateral band work. Those don't have this huge eccentric load where you're
Right.
stretching a muscle under load into these long muscle lengths and then reversing it. They don't even work you. None of those work you well in a stretched position. So therefore, they're not going to create much muscle damage. You won't get sore. You can do that 5 days a week if you wanted. You could do those exercises, and it might work very well. Maybe that works better than the traditional way. I don't know the answer to that. I hope I can learn over time. But um, but if you try to do the super high volume, doing, squatting 3 days a week, deadlifting 3 days a week, doing walking barbell lunges 3 days a week, then also throw in your hip thrusts, your back extensions, your seated hip abduction machine, your cable standing hip abduction, and then band work, it's a recipe for disaster. So you have to know what you're doing. You have to understand the biomechanics of these exercises and the physiology of, you know, if you have too much damage too often, you're not gonna set PRs. You're not gonna be fully recovered. You're not gonna. And so I have found that I like the more moderate routines, and I'm thinking more long term rather than just let's just get this person crazy results in 2 months, setting them up for failure because they're going to snap. This is the thing with dieting too. And then so that's something that there is some support in the research, but the research is mixed with that.
Yeah.
With volume stuff. And then
Well, I'll chime in there. I think that when it came, so my thesis when I was in my master's program was two different models of DUP. Obviously, DUP was super popular back then when I was doing it. And so what I thought, or what I kind of noticed, was how everybody was getting hurt all of a sudden doing DUP the way that it was laid out for powerlifting, where you're doing squats, deadlifts, bench 3, 4 times, 5 times a week even. And yeah, people were getting so strong. It was crazy. They were setting PRs, going to nationals, all these new world records, but then all of a sudden they're getting hurt, right? And so when you look at the research, the most you can squeeze out of a research study in a traditional university setting is the length of a semester. You can't really go more than that because everybody goes home, they go for the summer or whatever the case may be. So yeah, for 8 to 12 weeks, maybe even 16 weeks, like DUP was awesome. People set PRs, they got stronger than ever. But what happens when you take that line beyond the 16 weeks, right? We can't just assume it keeps going up. That's what happened to, what was that spacecraft that they launched, because their projections said that it could last, or it could withstand so much temperature, but they never actually tested it at that temperature and it blew up. It's the same kind of thing. Like, well, we're assuming it's just linear, there's never going to be a drop off. But I think with volume and intensity and the mix of those two, eventually you break, just like your client. And that could actually have some like really long-term permanent effects.
Oh, not just from an injury perspective, but from a psychological perspective too. And so when DUP became so popular, I remember having clients do it, and God, the strength gains were insane. Like never before seen these types of strength gains. But then you had people who had never had knee pain in their lives getting knee pain because they're squatting 4 days a week. They can't handle 4 days a week of squatting, People having hip pain from squatting. They might have some FAI, like some femoral acetabular impingement, but if you squat twice a week with just 3 sets, you can handle it. But then you start doing 4 sets 3 times a week, it's too much. And then they get that pain, and then it casts doubt. They have fear-related, it's the hesitation. If you have fear, you're not going to maximize your muscle activation. And, so we all went through that phase at that time, and then you learn to back off and be more moderate.
Absolutely. So I think when it comes to, the science and how it, coexists with practice, and it coexists, like, obviously you're a man of both sides. You're somebody who started out just as a personal trainer and learning as much as you could without, the academia side of things. And then you decided to continue on with your education, go get a PhD. And you're right. I feel like there's a lot of contention between both sides where, the scientists want to they're the experts. So they want to assert their expertise on what goes on in the gym. And then a lot of the people in the gym say, well, like, you don't know what it's like in the gym. And so you can't really make those claims. what do you think can be done to bridge that gap? What do you think can be done to, get rid of, is it always going to just exist because there's jealousy on both sides? Do you think there's anything that we can do to really come together? I know there's things like the NSCA and a bunch of different or organizations that are trying to bridge the gap maybe, but it seems like it's a war zone almost. It's like really hard to bring those two sides together.
So it's funny because I think you maximize your learning when it's a pie chart split into thirds, right? So 1/3 of your knowledge comes from training yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can you test all these things? How can you test new exercises and new programs if you aren't lifting yourself? Okay. But in that way, you only learn about your body and how it responds. Then you train other people, you learn about other people. And then so 1/3 of it's training yourself, 1/3 of it's training others. And then the other third is reading and listening to podcasts and going to conferences and learning through, studying in whatever manner. And I don't see how anyone can argue that those three things aren't critical. Like, how could anyone ever say, I learn in the trenches? The gym teaches me what I need to know. How the heck would we know any half of what we know if we didn't conduct experiments and practice the scientific method? Obviously, that's needed to maximize your effectiveness as a trainer and a lifter and a coach. Conversely, obviously, you can't just be in a lab studying. You've got to also be a practitioner. If you don't understand the limitations of the knowledge you gain just from carrying out research, then that's sad.
Right.
But I see it all the time, both sides, and it's all due to this genetic. Think about it. It's like a hardwired evolutionary men. Well, humans, I guess, but I think more so with men too. Like, we would never, if we were realistic, we'd probably have a hard time having any confidence to even like mate with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm Bret Contreras. I'm cool. I have 775,000 followers. Well, guess what? The Rock has 100 million. Okay.
Right.
I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. Well, there's guys who are 7'1", and there's guys who are 250 pounds with, I probably have 18% body fat. There's guys who are 250 pounds with 8% body fat, I'm pretty sharp. I got my PhD. Trust me, I have colleagues that are way smarter than me. I know where I stand. I've deadlifted 620. There's guys who have deadlifted 1,000. At any single thing, there's people that are way better than you. Before YouTube, I used to think I was kind of strong, and then YouTube came around, and you see 16-year-old boys lifting, like doing for 10 reps where I can do for 1 rep. So we have this thing where we have to, like, in order to have confidence, we have to. I mean, you'd be depressed if you were always comparing yourself to others and being realistic. Like, oh my God, like, you'd be like, why would this woman like me? I'm so mediocre. This person's better than me at everything. So we label people, we judge people. It's just a human psychologic condition. There's jealousy all around, and you have massive Dunning-Kruger effect. Dunning-Kruger effect is rampant. People are too stupid to know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They overvalue their intelligence with things. Like, think about it. Everyone in the world is a political expert. Like, how would you know? I know what it takes to be an expert in something.
Right.
If I wanted to be making political recommendations, I would have to study this stuff. I complain whatever city I live in. I'm like, man, they need to improve this, but I don't know the budget. I don't know all the circumstances that go involved in it, but everyone has an opinion. The coaches, they don't understand, because you can be an awesome coach never really studying science, especially if you intern at an awesome place, and if you're kind of scientific in your practice, you're always striving to improve, and you pay close attention and you tinker with things. You can be an awesome coach never reading a journal article, especially if you were trained under some awesome coach and you learn their system and you learn how to coach the lifts.
Sure.
And so those types tend to underestimate, because they'll be like, what can, they'll read a research study and be like, this is stupid, this study's stupid, this doesn't apply. But you can always learn from studies. You can, how are you ever going to revolutionize anything if you aren't reading research and you aren't studying the science of things? Yes, you can be good, but you'll never be your best, and you'll never revolutionize anything without knowing the science. Okay. On the other hand, the scientists, they don't know what they don't know. They just read studies. They don't know the challenges and what we deal with as trainers, and the typical pitfalls and
Mm.
drawbacks that we have. And so they're, say you study fat loss, well, and you're like, well, just do this. All right. Well, you understand how hard it is for some people to just do this. You've got to work on habits and mindfulness, and work on behavior, not just tell them, just here are your macros, just stick to this. It's that easy. Get this many steps and eat these macros each day and you will see results. Not everyone can stick to them. So we need to be respectful of, you just be a good human, and be like, don't be conceited and cocky, and recognize that we can all learn from. I can learn from the physical therapist, I can learn from the bodybuilders, I can learn from the powerlifters, I can learn from the strongmen, I can learn from the Olympic weightlifters, I can learn from the strength coaches, I
Mm.
can learn from the sports scientists and the researchers, I can learn from people who research physiology, people who research biomechanics, people who research pain and physical therapy, uh, anatomists, physiologists. I can learn from, neuro specialists. Like, I can learn from anyone. Everyone can. You just have to be, um, drop the ego, and like online. Like, I've never once bashed someone online. I don't ever go, in all my years of being on social media, I don't go on and be like, someone sets a PR and I write shitty form, or like they post their physique progress and I'm like, you've been lifting for 5 years and that's all the muscle you've developed. Or,
Mm.
yeah, I don't do that. People need to be more supportive of each other. And yeah, it's hard because it's like a dog eat dog world. It's cutthroat competition. Sometimes you can think of it like, how do I get ahead? How am I going to rise up in this industry? There's such a big industry. You can feel like, hell, I'll go like look at some conference and I'm like, I don't even know who any of these people are, and people don't even know who I am. And it's a really big industry, and it can be very intimidating. You might feel like you have to be rip on everyone, but that's not how you rise up. I
Right.
mean, take it from me, that is not how you rise up in an industry. That's not how you rise up, how you elevate as a human.
Yeah.
Like, I try to surround myself with very supportive people, because what's the saying, like a rising tides raise all ships,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
uh, that's how you get ahead. And you got this, the this scarcity versus abundance mindset. There's some truth to that. Like, if you're the type that's threatened by everyone, you're not going to achieve your maximum potential in life. You're not going to be happy. You got to have a little bit of that abundance mindset and be more supportive of people. And that's all it is. It's like, you need to break down that barrier. Like, that's the mission of the NSCA, to bridge the gap between, the lab and the field.
Right.
And that's what I try to do too.
Yeah.
I bridge that gap, but it's not easy when you're dealing with closed-minded people.
Yeah, I think that social media, especially, like, comparison to other, like, there's an unprecedented amount of comparison that we can do with other people. Like, it used to be that we could only compare ourselves to our small group of people that we knew, or the people we saw at work, or the people we see at the gym, or whatever. And nowadays, it's you see people from all over the world, and of course Instagram feeds you the best of the best, because that's what gets people to stay on the platform longer and gets more likes and things like that. And so, like, we're constantly being bombarded by, and like, our fears and our insecurities are constantly being bombarded with these images. And I think the easy thing to do for most people, like, it's easy to just react with negativity, because that makes you feel better right away. in the short term at least, and like, I don't know, it takes them down a peg or whatever psychologically is going on there. I don't know, because same thing. I don't try to get into that kind of stuff online either. But like the hard thing to do is to, recognize that this person, okay, maybe they did get born with incredible genetics, and maybe they have had every single thing going for them in their life to get them to where they are now. But even that person had to work hard to get to where they're at in some capacity. And so, like, it's much harder for us to just recognize that other people are capable of working hard, and that maybe, like, if we want to get there, we just have to work hard too, and it's going to take years. It's going to take a lot of effort, and we may never get to that point because our genetics aren't the same as theirs. But we'll get to a point where we're much better than we're at now. I don't know what it is that people don't like. They can't realize that, or they have a hard time getting to that.
It's so funny you said what you said, because I think that's part of the secret to things. It's like compare yourself to you. Don't compare yourself
Mm,
to others. But if you do compare yourself, like I compare myself, if I compared myself to people who have been lifting weights, or like I've been lifting weights for since I was 15. I'm 43. So what is that? 28 years.
right.
Um, and if I compare myself to like these fitness influencers, I would be massively depressed. Like some of my colleagues are just shredded.
Yeah.
They're my friends. I've got all these friends that are way more ripped than me, but I don't compare myself to them. I compare myself to my high school friends. I don't even hang out with them anymore. But I'm
Mm,
like, you know, every once in a while I'll see them, and I'm like, I look, I probably look the best out of all my high school friends. They have these big beer bellies and stuff, but I think that's just part of the secret, is to not compare yourself to the creme de la creme up here.
yeah.
Look at
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
I work with some of the top bikini competitors in the world, and they're not happy. If you were to say to them when they just started working out, hey, guess what? In 4 years, you're going to look like this. They'd be like,
Right.
what? Oh my God, I'm going to be the happiest person in the world. And guess what? When they get there, they're
They're
miserable.
not happy.
They're
Yeah.
miserable. They never are like, it's because they're so, I don't even push bikini or even powerlifting much on people anymore, because this competition isn't good for everyone. It just makes you're never good enough. It's like,
Right.
no matter what you lift, no matter how good you look, you're comparing yourself to that next person above you, and you're wanting to get to that level. And it's the nature of competition. And sometimes we just need to sit back and be content with what we have and how far we've gone.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was talking to a friend of mine about how I was going to do this podcast with you, and you're saying, like, you could be pissed off about how you don't look like The Rock, or you don't look like, whatever, Thor from The World's Strongest Man, something like that. And but he was telling me, like, man, Brett's really, like, blown up. Like, he's huge. Like, he's so big and muscular. And it's like, other people, the way they perceive you is so different from the way you perceive yourself. And it's kind of sad, right? I mean, I fall into that same trap, because I was a big kid. I was 300 pounds in high school, and I was like complete opposite of the way I look now. But there's still that part of me that feels that I'm that person. So I still see myself as, like, oh, I compare myself to even some of my friends in fitness, and I'm like, nah, man, they're in better shape than me, and I start to feel bad. But then I have to sometimes just go to, like, the grocery store or the mall, and just, like, look around and be like, okay, out of all these people, how many people look better than me? And it's a little conceited, I guess, but it's like not many. It's like 1%. You're
Yep.
already, like, if you even work out on a consistent basis at all, you probably look better than 90% of the people out there. You're just
I
comparing yourself to the
I
0.001% that you see all the time.
so agree with you there. And and then a lot of this fear that we have is like based on the opposite sex. It's like
Mm,
everyone's worried, like, am I gonna, is this person gonna like me, or is this person gonna want to stay with me, or why wouldn't they like this person over me? And if people understood that, like, that stuff's, yes, it's I won't lie and say it's not important at all. you know, but it's if those same people are focusing so hard on their looks, focus more on their personality and just making that
Oh
person
yeah.
feel focus on making that person feel special, they'd be a lot more successful in that regard. And you'd realize, got it, could have didn't have to work out that I didn't have to stay at 8% body fat my whole life. You actually have more friends than at 12% because you could eat some popcorn and a hot dog and have a beer every once in a while, you know.
Yeah.
So you could have some of the chips and salsa when you go to Mexican food.
Oh my gosh. Right.
That's how I am right now. It's like I'm not my leanest, but hell, I'm working so hard and I'm stressed and I'm not sleeping as well as I could. But I'm also fun. When people come visit in San Diego, I try to take them out to eat, you know, and I'm a fun guy and I'm enjoying things. So the only thing worse is when you're, you know, I've achieved a lot of financial and business success. It's hard. It's hard. I always say this: I can work on my physique, I can work on myself, like self improvement, or I can work on my business.
Yeah.
They require ultimate focus, and I can't do all three at the same
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Uh, if I'm ever the times I have my best physique, I'm like, it's really hard for me to stick to a diet. I'm hungry around the clock, and I'm like, but I can get down to 225 pounds or 235 and look way more ripped. Okay, that requires a lot of my attention, and then I'm not going to be focusing on myself or my business as much. And then, you know, or I can focus on my business, my physique slides a little bit. I focus on myself, and ironically those things tend to help the others, but it's hard to do. It's hard to say I'm going to meditate right now,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you wake up and you have this things to do list.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to lately it's like I am forcing myself. I'm going to watch some Netflix tonight. I'm going to read this novel that I have, you know. Because it's good for me and it keeps me in balance. We with Instagram now, you can feel guilty round the clock because, like me, it's, you know, I haven't posted today, and my posts have not been that good lately. You know, the last few have just been, you know, like par for the course, nothing special. You can feel guilty round the clock that you could be doing more. Now, what you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have hours. It's like,
Right.
and we don't set limits on our hours. We don't go, I'm working from, you know, between the hours of 10 and 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. and at 6 p.m. I'm putting my phone away until the
Right.
next day. I'm not going to check social media until the next day. We don't do that. We work around the clock these days. So sometimes
Yeah.
you have to force yourself to have, like, program in fun things, because otherwise you don't enjoy your life and you're stressed and we're like sympathetic all day long, you
Mm,
know, stressed out and
absolutely.
anxious, and that you won't achieve your best physique. You want to achieve your ultimate success. So you have to keep yourself in balance. And it's hard. It's hard too when you're crushing it in business. Uh, and you can become a workaholic,
Yeah.
and that just like you can be obsessed with your physique, you can be obsessed with your career and business, remember, the goal is happiness, not money, not being shredded, not this. It's happiness, and that's going to involve a balance of things.
Yeah. I'll ask you one last question. I know earlier you talked about how, like, you wrote down everything that you could do that could make you money, and you probably picked between all of those things what was most important for you. I hope to get that list from you one day, by the way. But what are three pieces of advice that you could give, say, to me or other people who are starting to come up in this industry, or maybe are on the side of things where they want to get into this industry and they're just thinking of what they can do? What are the three, like, big take homes that you can give somebody to help them succeed?
First thing, focus on educating people like that. My Instagram, when it took off, is when you can go back to my when I first started posting and watch the evolution of my Instagram posts. When I started taking off is when I used to just make it about me. Hey everybody, look at my workout last night. Check out, here's what I did last night. And then I'd like repost you know, Chris Beardsley's infographic or something. And then that was what I posted. How easy is that?
Mm,
Like, I work out, I would record my workout and then make it in a video. That's not teaching people much, though. My master's degree is in curriculum and instruction, and I needed to go back to my roots and say, I'm going to start teaching people. When you focus on teaching people, you get raving fans. They're thankful. Like, this guy spends several hours a day teaching me. Those are the people who are going to buy your stuff. Okay, that's the first tip. The second tip, don't just focus on followers. I have some of my female clients, some of them have like, we share this stuff with each other. We'll like go to our Instagrams and show the breakdown. So I remember one of my clients has like 1 million followers and 82% are men. And she posts half naked selfies all the time. So if 82% of 1 million followers are these men, they're not going to buy anything she has to put out. They're not going to do any of her products or services. So she really has like 180,000 followers that are women that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't really have, it's not about your followers, it's about your customers. If you're trying to make, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're just, is just a hobby and you already have a job, then, and you want to go for followers, so be it. But if you're actually a businessman and wanting to, you know, increase your profit over time, then don't just focus on followers, focus on the right followers. And you get that by posting educational stuff and um, staying true to your, you know, roots. And then trying to think of another piece of advice. A third one, don't like resist the temptation to take shortcuts. You know, I know one of my trainers, when they started working for me, they were like, you know, trying to go hit like on like thousands of people's pages every day and try and doing like following a bunch of people and then unfollowing like hashtags, things like that. Those don't work that well. Hashtags don't, I don't do a bunch of hashtags. I've never gotten bots. I don't know how to buy followers. I wouldn't even know how to. I never concerned myself with that. Fake followers, like I think it's obvious if you have fake followers because you post something, you've got 1 million followers and you have 10 comments, you know, you don't have engagement. And then some of these people get these bots, they buy their followers and then they leave comments and you can see it's like they're just emojis and stuff and they'll read, it's like one person leaving 10 comments and that's to boost your, then you're just a phony. Who wants to be a phony, you know? Resist the urge to take those shortcuts and just focus on creating good content, however, and but stick to a goal. Like, how many times can you post per week? Say one post being like not a slam dunk, but like 2 posts being awesome. Could you do 3 posts a week? 2 being awesome, 1 being, you know, just something that's not quite as serious. Yes, you could. Well, post 3 times a week for a year and you'll do well. You'll improve. You'll get more followers. You'll make more money. But you got to be consistent. And Instagram is a job. You know, you don't just, when you're on Instagram, don't just be, you know, screwing around. Do it with a purpose. Like I follow some people and I watch what they do. I stay, you know, I look at their stories. I stay invested in their lives, but I'm seeing what's the trends. I'm seeing what's going on. What are the big hot items right now? And then I'm also, you know, I've got colleagues. You got to support them if you want them to support you. It's a reciprocal relationship. But most of my time, I'm being productive. I'm not just scrolling through, hitting the search, laughing, having a great time. I'm replying to comments. I'm going to my DMs, answering those, things like that. So treat it, don't, it's like someone could go, well, yeah, I'm on Instagram 4 hours a day. Right. You're screwing around 4 hours a day. I'm on Instagram for maybe 2 hours a day, but or 3 hours a day, but it's with a purpose.
Productive.
Yeah, I think productive. So
yeah.
Those are 3 tips that I could think of off the top of my head.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, you know, one thing that I heard there is like probably being willing to go through the tough times and like grind through those. Cause Like everybody wants that instant gratification to get like 1,000 likes on their pictures right away. But like if you're posting quality stuff and only getting 100 likes or 50 likes or 20 likes, it's like the perseverance to keep doing that, even in the face of not getting the results you want, is like, I think you learn a lot there. You learn a lot about
I had a
yourself.
friend who had 80,000 followers on Instagram, and he made an ebook and he made 500 grand.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Not
it's
bad.
not just, I know, it's not just about the followers,
Yeah.
it's about the
Cool.
quality of followers. And I also know people who have, one person I know has like, 2 million followers, and she doesn't really make much at all.
Hmm.
Doesn't know how to, she's not a business person because she spends all her time creating selfies and it's all vanity stuff. She's not a business person, and it's
Gotcha.
not just about followers. It's about, and remember, life, your goal is happiness, not just followers or money. And even within the followers, it's about paying like interested followers who will, if you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
who will subscribe to your stuff and buy your stuff and buy your products. Not, and to that you have to win them over. You win them over by teaching them stuff and convincing them that you have credibility.
Sure. Awesome, man. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you. Like you always have so much awesome stuff to say. And like, I like talking to you because I'll ask you a question and you end up answering it, but you like give me so much more information along the way that I even asked, but it's great because it's all good information.
I usually find my way back around.
Yeah, you do. You do. I just got to stay quiet and let you get there. But cool, man.
Thank
Well,
you for having
thanks
me
a
on.
lot. And, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Catch you guys next time.